Hello, shameless you. Sarah Ellen here, your fearless, shameless leader. Um, so we're going to talk about boundaries and why boundaries are key to good sex. Um, what I had planned to talk about with you is what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell you how I define a boundary, how I think about boundaries, and why I think they're so powerful. A boundary is not about, it's really not that much about another person's behavior. It is about you and what you want in your life. So here's you. And then imagine that you have a golden hula hoop around you, and everything that happens within that golden hula hoop is totally up to you. Everything that happens within that golden hula hoop is yours to manage, to direct, to control, to decide what you want to do with it. Within that, hey, Allison, within that is your preferences, your beliefs, your likes and dislikes, what's okay with you, what's not okay with you. There's no moral issue here. It's just like, this is me, this is what I like, this is what I don't like. So, and it doesn't matter what other people like or don't like. I mean, of course, we're going to have a conversation about it and negotiate with people that we care about and stuff like that. But what we're talking about right now is what happens in your golden hula hoop is yours. Regardless of what anybody else is doing. And let's see here. Let me look at my notes here. When you compromise what happens in there, when you believe you can't have something that you want, when you believe that somebody else is stopping you from feeling a way that you want to feel or having an experience that you want to have, the inevitable result of that, well, what will happen is you'll feel frustrated, you'll feel irritated, you'll feel annoyed. If you are somebody who feels frustrated or annoyed or irritated a lot of the time, probably your boundaries are being compromised. Anger is a signal of one of two things. One, that there's an injustice happening, and the other, that a boundary is being crossed, or basically a boundary is being crossed. And so there's different levels of that. So if you're feeling annoyed or irritated or frustrated, those are all different shades of anger. And you'll experience that when you believe that you're out of control in some way. So there's a difference between, something happening that's not okay and you being like, oh, hell no. And there's a surge of anger, and it's a catalyst for change. It's a catalyst for getting your attention, for getting their attention. It's totally appropriate. But what happens is we then take that energy surge and try to make change from that. And then we believe things like we can't have it, or they're in my way, or it's not fair, or things like that, and then feel frustrated and more pissed off. And that's a different flavor. That's not using anger as a catalyst. That's trying to use it as a fuel source, and it's not appropriate. So one of the things that we talked about earlier this week in the group is what to do about household things like dishes and kids and taking care of shit. And I was thinking about, so ever since we talked about that, I was thinking about the household management situation with my ex-husband. And he did almost nothing. And by the time he left, and I also did almost nothing, because I believed that it was pointless. These are the things that I believed. So I would look at our fucking messy kitchen, and I would think things like, you're not going to help. You're going to sit there and watch me. I don't want to clean up after you. I don't want your fucking dishes in here. But basically, I was just complaining about it. I never just decided, like, fuck this. I am not going to live like this. I'm not going to live in a kitchen that looks like this. And I'm going to do whatever it takes to make that happen. Because I was so focused on what he was not doing and how not okay with me it was that he wasn't doing that stuff. And instead of just being like, all right, he's not going to do it. This is what I want. So from my hula hoop, what I want is a clean kitchen. I want to walk in and feel proud of my space and feel like I can, cook and operate and do what I need to do without a bunch of hassle and drama. And I don't want it to stink and whatever. All the reasons that I want to have a clean kitchen. I didn't focus on what I wanted, which is what happens in the hula hoop. I want a clean kitchen. I want to experience this when I walk in. And instead, what I focused on was him, which is outside of my hula hoop, right? What he's not doing, how he's making my life harder, how he's sitting on the couch. And because I was so focused on things that I couldn't control, I didn't do anything about what I could control, which is my kitchen. I could have done the dishes. I could have cleaned it. But because I didn't want to do it for him, or it wasn't fair, and I continued with that messaging with myself and with him, I didn't make it happen for myself. I let him completely cock block my experience. And we never want to let somebody else cock block our experience. Okay? Put that on a t-shirt. You won't cock block my kitchen. So the way that situation would show up in a boundary is, if you were my client, what I would do with you is I would say, okay, what is it that you want? What is the result that you want to create? And what are you willing to do to make that happen? And we would just focus on you and your kitchen. And then you get to decide what you want to do about him. No, you don't want to clean up after him. Okay, then, if he's going to live there, he's probably going to use the dishes. So it's just the price of living with somebody else. You could ask him to use paper plates. You could ask him to help from your hula hoop. The difference between, hey, I need you to help me do this, which is like, I'm going to have a clean kitchen and I'm going to do whatever it takes to have a clean kitchen. And I'd like you to help me with it. You can make that request from a place of like, this is what I want and need. It's totally different spirit of, hey, lazy ass, why don't you get off your, like focusing on him, right? That's so not helpful. All it does is just piss him off and make him dig his heels in. So ultimately, we can't change their behavior. But for one thing, you have a lot more control over your situation, your experience of it. And then to a certain degree, we have control over our environment, but there are times when we don't. Like, for example, when my ex-husband was making dirty dishes and didn't clean it up, if he was never going to clean it up, I don't have a lot of control over that, except that I've chosen to continue to let him live here. So if you can't control the environment, you can control your response to it. And so that is within your hula hoop. So always focusing on your hula hoop. So you can create the environment that you want to a certain degree. But you can always create the internal environment that you want. So, and then let's look at an example of kids and how this shows up using the hula hoop concept. Okay. So I can't make my kids do things. They don't know that. They think that I have a lot more control than I have, but I don't. I can't make them do shit. So when I make requests of them, what I do is I get really grounded. I don't always do that, but when I am practicing this principle, I get really grounded and I think, what do I want to happen here from my hula hoop, right? What is the experience that I want to have? What do I want my children to do? What do I want the environment to look like and feel like? And how do I want to be in this situation? And then I make my requests or give my directions from that place. And I tell you what, my kids are way more amenable when I am like that than when I am focusing on them and what they're doing or what they're not doing or complaining about it from this. It's subtle. It's a little bit powerless. When you're complaining, you're basically saying there's nothing I can do about that. So I'm just going to complain versus back to my hula hoop. What do I want to happen here? What will it take to make that happen? And am I willing to do that? Those are the questions that I would always ask in any boundary situation. So with the dishes, what do I want to happen here? I want to have a clean kitchen. What will it take to do that? Clean it. Am I willing to do that? Yes or no? In my case, the answer was no, because I want to punish him. Because the thought it's not fair that he's not doing it is so strong. And so I just created a really pretty terrible situation for myself because I was so focused on what he wasn't doing and how unfair it was and how I didn't want to do it for him and do his stuff. So I hope you can see how within boundaries, it's about being in the boundary of your golden hula hoop. So you stepping into your power, which I hate that phrase, but that's exactly what it is, stepping into your power and deciding, what do you want to happen? What will it take to make that happen? And are you willing to do that? And sometimes the answer is no, but I will always ask you to ask yourself, what do you want to happen here? So I was thinking about my daughter when she wants my attention, she will ask me questions. And there's something psychological about question asking. So I used to be a telemarketer. I was a really good telemarketer. And which meant that, I don't know, I made pretty good money telemarketing, but it also meant that I pissed a lot of people off, right? Because I was incredibly pushy. But what I would do sometimes is I would use the psychology of question asking to keep people on the phone. And sometimes I would ask people questions and they would be yelling the answers at me while they were trying to hang up the phone. And I would ask them another question and they would answer the question. And it was so, I mean, it's awful, I know to say. But the psychology of question asking, like our brain has to answer. It's like we should do a live sometime on powerful questions, the questions that you ask yourself. Boy, talk about hooking your brain into some shitty loops. But anyway, so my daughter would hook me in with questions. If she wants my attention, she'll just start asking questions. And it seems so innocuous. It's like, there's nothing wrong with the questions that she's asking. But I caught on to it at some point. And so the way that I handled that, sometimes I would focus on her. I'd be like, stop asking me questions. Stop asking me questions. But that didn't do anything. It didn't get her attention. I wasn't coming from a place of power, and I wasn't respecting myself. I wasn't in my own hula hoop. And as a consequence, she wasn't respecting it either. But here's how it goes. So you step within your hula hoop, right? You step back into your own experience. So what do I want to happen here? I don't want her questions anymore. I want some peace and quiet. That's what I want to happen here. Okay, so I would say, all right, I'm not going to answer any more of your questions. You can ask me one more, make it a good one. And then I'm not answering any more questions or talking until we get home. And then she'd come up with her question. And it was so clear what I was asking. Now, sometimes she slipped up and talked to me, but it was so clear what I wanted. Yeah, I'm going to get to the hula hoop for sex. Don't you worry. I'm talking principles here. So stepping into my hula hoop, now sometimes she would ask me questions and it would be like, okay, I'm not answering. And all I would have to say is, I'm not answering any more questions until we get home. And then I could make my request, please be quiet. All right. So what I'm saying is, when you focus on your experience, when you step within your hula hoop and you decide who you want to be and how you want to be and what experience you want to have a ton of energy left to have sex. And if you have boundary problems, if you feel irritated, if you feel like you're focusing on him or your energy is out here, if you feel like you're spread out, probably it's because you're not in your hula hoop, then it's pretty tough to have sex. It's pretty tough to then go and open up in ways that you haven't been, to pull up your reserves and have sex with somebody. And sex becomes this currency in a lot of relationships. It's a tool for power. It's a tool for getting what you want. And if you're believing, well, I don't get my way anywhere. I don't get anything. If your energy is always out here and your focus is always out here, then it's easy to transfer that and believe in a lot of couples, like one wants to and one doesn't want to. It's often not a completely matched libido situation. So for example, the way that it looked for me, I am the one who wants it and my partners tend to be the ones who don't, right? So I push and they pull. And so like with my ex, when I felt out of control, I felt powerless, I felt like I couldn't get anything that I wanted. Those are all beliefs that I had based on me not standing in my own hula hoop, then I tried to use sex as a way to get what I want. Like, let's like do the thing that you're good at. And I would try to force him into that. Like, I couldn't force him into doing something else. I would try to force him into that. So it was just like basically treating sex like I did the kitchen, trying to force something to happen, not from my hula hoop, not from like, this is what I want. This is a great thing to have happen. Would you like a piece of this? It was more like, you should want this. You should come and get this. Like, this is awesome. What's wrong with you? You know, totally focusing on him. Can you see how this translates from the dishes to my kid asking questions to sex? And then I know sometimes some women don't want to so much, and they feel like really overwhelmed and overloaded, and like they do everything, you know, again, similar thoughts. And similar, like the same focusing outside of themselves. And then with because sex isn't their go-to, or they don't use sex to get what they want, they'll be like, why would I want to have sex with you then? Like, if like in this power struggle, like why would I go there? Why would I want that? And I'm suggesting that if you start living your life from your hula hoop, where you're deciding, you're creating your environment as much as possible, and you're creating your environment as much as possible, and you're certainly creating your response to your environment, and you're in charge of what you're going to do. It's like taking as much agency, as much responsibility for yourself as possible. Then you have all the reserves left to have sex, and you can have great sex from a place of power versus a place of reacting like, oh, he likes me, he wants me, or he doesn't want me, or he doesn't like me, or what's wrong with me. All of that reaction, like none of that is sexy. It doesn't really help you harness any of that energy. And sex is just one more place where it's like how we do one thing is how we do everything. So if you're doing this shit in the kitchen, and you're doing this shit in your minivan with your kid asking questions, you're probably doing it to some degree in the bedroom. So, so let's see here. So Jano, you asked for a checklist. I want you to I really just want to talk about the principle here of like, what do I want? What will it take to make that happen? And am I willing to do that? Those three questions in any situation. And Sasha, you asked about our teacher, Brooke Castillo. I'm a master coach through the Life Coach School, and Brooke Castillo was my teacher. And the way that she teaches boundaries is essentially what I'm saying. It's about like personal responsibility and you taking responsibility for what you're going to do. But she talks about using a phrase of, if you do this, I'm going to do this. And the principle of that is fine, because it's essentially like, if you don't do the dishes, fine, I'm going to do the dishes. That's what it is. If you don't stop talking, I'm going to leave the room. I don't know. I found that like that phrase sounds really punitive. It's hard to use that phrasing. Actually, it's really hard to use it when you're actually coming from your hula, because it's kind of like, this is what I want to happen. Do you want to do it? Great. If not, fine. Then we'll make another negotiation. And like coming from your power also doesn't mean that like you just command people to do what you want, but you can negotiate when you're negotiating from what you want. It's like, hey, I want to have sex. You want to have sex? No, not right now. Okay, great. How about later? Sounds great. It's not like, we're going to have sex. My hula hoop commands you. And if you don't step into my hula hoop, then I'm going to, I don't know, step out on the town or stuff. I don't know. It's not like that. It's just like when you do it from your place of power and asking for what you want and doing what you want, you have a ton more resources, right? So, and yes, Sasha asked, we went back forth a little bit about like, it's not like there's not that many boundary issues. It's more about managing your own mind. Yes, manage your own mind, manage your own energy, and then you get to decide what to do. You let the chips fall where they may. And plus, like, how the fuck do you know what other people are going to do? Like, there are some things that are like 100% deal breakers for me, but a lot of things are a little bit negotiable. It's like, we're going to have a regular sex life. That doesn't mean we have to do, I'm going to have a regular sex life. That doesn't mean we have to do it like exactly when or how or whatever I say. It's not like, well, if you don't do this, then I'm going to now do this. What that does is creates like a fence. And I'm not talking about creating a fence. I'm not talking about creating a physical, like something between us necessarily, but I am talking about like, I'm in my hula hoop, you're in your hula hoop, and then let's talk. Let's hang out together from our own hula hoops, minding our own business, managing our own energy, having our own thoughts and consequential feelings, and whatever actions we take as a result of that, we manage our own. Let me see if there's something else. No, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover. I really just wanted to cover the concept of boundaries and how managing your energy and taking responsibility for your environment and what you want, and then deciding what you're going to do when they don't do that. Like, you can decide, but when you decide from your hula hoop and not from deciding that they're a dumbass or they're a fuckface or something, then you just have a ton more control. And if you want to have better sex, then why not like maintain your energy? Why not feel as whole and have as much agency and as much power in your own life as possible, right? So I hope that helps. I'd love to know what questions you have. And if you want to get more specific, if you want to give me situations or something that I can help you walk through that, I'm happy to do that.